emails, phone calls, text messages, following orders from Special Agent Nigro about evidence return, sitting on the phone, on hold on the phone with SAM.gov for an hour at a time. We explained this to Mr. Fernando. These are the urgent steps she took by this court's direction and by our direction to try to get funded on time. She understands that might not be reimbursable, but we're certainly going to seek some kind of contract ratification because of her diligent efforts.
Okay. That's all I have for you, Counsel. Lieutenant Phipps.
It's just on the legal side, Your Honor. Yes. To simplify this as much as possible, where we currently stand here today, there's been a lot of questions, is that Ms. Wong cannot complete all this work that she's been ordered to be funded for before trial. So if we don't abate proceedings, if trial goes on Monday, this court is forcing the defense to go to trial without a necessary expert, without the ability to present a complete defense. We have to forfeit this piece of evidence, the ability to ask about this, because we haven't been given the opportunity to consult with our expert. I understand that there's a push to get this court going on time. I think the court even mentioned that in your findings of fact and conclusions of law on our motion to recuse, which is one of your jobs to make sure the trial goes fairly and on time. We can't make the trial go on time and sacrifice vital rights that Commander Ely has. In this case, expert assistance. That's why the remedy of abatement exists in RCM 703. And it doesn't matter if the government intentionally failed to fund her or negligently failed to fund her, or if their contracting process was so convoluted that it resulted in her being failed to be funded by this point in time. None of that matters. The question is, was she funded on time? And do we have enough time to actually consult with her? We would have had that time had she been funded when the court ordered it back in November. Now we're here on eve of trial, we don't have that time. Abatement is the only appropriate remedy here.
Why isn't a continuance an appropriate remedy?
Because it's not the defense's fault. We don't buy that time, sir. The rule says abatement, not continuance. So we look at 703, she's failed to be funded, the rule says abatement.
Okay. Understood, Counsel.
And I'm sure continuance in some mode is an alternate remedy, but that's not one we're subscribing to because that time isn't owned by the defense. There's an additional issue that also requires abatement at this point in time, and it goes back to the COVID vaccinations the military judges received and some of the trial counsel have received. Commander Newsad mentioned that essentially we're on an uneven playing field when it comes to us going to Groton and advocating and doing our jobs in front of a panel of members. Everybody at this table is going to have to devote some degree of headspace to our personal safety, to the chore of avoiding being infected with a deadly virus at what is now, it seems like we have these new peaks all the time, but now a new peak of this pandemic with more virulent strains of this virus floating around and infecting people. We've got to devote our time and attention to protecting us against that. The government doesn't have to spend as much time thinking about that. And so this court should at least be abated until myself and my team and Commander Ely have had an opportunity also to get access to this vaccine.
Okay, so has your command made inquiries as to the access that you have to the vaccine?
That's with my XO and CO, Your Honor, but yes, inquiries have been made. I think there's a list coming out. I don't know what that timeline is right now. It's the military. A lot of times you're told to wait. So I have no guidance yet. But I know that the...
What about your client? What about Commander Ely? I know that the Coast Guard is stepping out at Coast Guard headquarters rather aggressively.
So Commander Ely requested it from his command, which is convening authority, and he hasn't been prioritized by that convening authority, by that command. So he hasn't been given a shot.
Okay, and it is not scheduled for a shot before next week?
No, sir.
Okay, and what about Lieutenant Brett through Coast Guard?
Dan.
think Lieutenant Brett is being offered one. She might be the only person. She's the only person on the team who has been offered one. So.
Okay.
And that was in response to this particular.
Lieutenant Commander Newsad's a part of the same command, correct? DSO North. It's the same command.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is there anything different out in Chicago, Lieutenant Commander Newsad?
Well, I'll just say from my, I'm OIC of an office in Great Lakes. I'm familiar with the process within the Navy. It's outside of jumping people in the line and having people pull strings for me or Lieutenant Phipps or anybody. Our process is handled locally. So I have, as the OIC of my office in Great Lakes, put my office, per their desires or not desires of the vaccine, I have submitted that information to Great Lakes. Right, so we are on the list.
With no timeline.
With no timeline. I mean, I'm phased. They have the CDC guidelines, and I'm very clearly a healthy, regular service member. Otherwise, unless somebody pulls a string for me, so I'm bottom phase.
Mm-hmm.
But I have raised my hand and said I'm ready and willing.
Okay, and Lieutenant Brett, is she offered a shot before next week?
I have a medical issue.
Yeah, there's a separate medical issue there, Your Honor.
Yep. Okay.
As far as the DSO side of the house goes, this issue's been raised with the Chief of Staff of the DSO, who also raised it with Rear Admiral Crandall, specifically for DSO personnel, and I guess NewSAD. I'm a branch head, so I don't want to see, but my name's on the list somewhere.
So it's an interesting dynamic, Counsel, right? Because we have continued to litigate cases before vaccines. So what has changed now that we have vaccines available?
This is what makes me mess up. This is an abatement. Are you doing abatement or is that going to...
The question is what has changed, Your Honor?
I guess my point that I'm wrestling with is that if a vaccine wasn't available, as it was not available, say, last fall or last summer, and we have all litigated cases, including contested cases. The court has held contested members trial. The last one I had everyone flown in from San Juan, and we were able to do that safely with mitigation measures like I outlined in my mitigation order. We've had numerous 39As here, and we've been able to do that safely without incident. So would the argument have been the same? Would you, if vaccines weren't available in half the room having it, would you have said that, hey, we need an abatement because we need to dedicate more headspace? Or is it just the fact that some folks have it and some folks don't?
Yeah, what's changed, Your Honor, is that trial counsel and the court have now been vaccinated and we have not. So it's an uneven playing field. Because, I've done these contested trials. We spent an awful lot of time worrying about COVID mitigation measures, and so did government counsel in those trials. That's not going to be the same in this case, where they've been inoculated and we have not. It is an uneven playing field. And they've been inoculated, again, they've got a direct benefit from pushing this trial through, right? So that's part of the reason it goes to this broader motion to abate, which is we need the opportunity to get ourselves on that same playing field, where we're not as worried for our client's health.
So, Counsel, the problem that we have, and the problem that I am wrestling with as the decision maker in this, is I have no facts that will let me know in when those vaccinations would happen. That may be June. That may for you all. That may be later in the summer.
And that's why we're asking for abatement and not a continuance, Your Honor.
Okay.
And this is also a case we're requiring a split between where we conduct voir dire, which is going to be maybe here tomorrow, and where we conduct the actual trial on the merits. Just there's additional concerns that trial counsel doesn't have to worry about, the court to an increased extent doesn't have to worry about for your own personal safety, sir. And we're still worrying about these issues. We have members that may be worried about these issues as well. I don't know how many members' panels have been inoculated yet or haven't. It doesn't quite go to the unequal sort of treatment of government versus defense counsel in this case. But the bottom line here, again, that COVID issue is a big issue. This inoculation is a big issue. And abatement is the appropriate way to allow us to get time to get ourselves inoculated and get on the even playing field. But we still have an expert who's necessary, who is still not funded. And by declining to rule on this motion to abate, I know the court had a lot of questions about why can't she do her work over the next week. That's caused that, is that she's been left in this limbo, wondering, like, what's required of me? I'm not funded yet. We can't ask her to do 35 hours of work over the next 5 days. It's humanly impossible for her to do that. That's why we submitted this additional enclosure.
So I guess I take issue with it's humanly impossible. That is not a full work week.
Federal holiday. She has other cases.
Your Honor, there's 2 federal holidays and she has other cases. I don't know what more the court wants from me. I've got the evidence, the reasons why she can't. I mean, it sounds to me like the court wants her to dedicate her entire life just to this case and this case alone. And that's an unreasonable demand that this court cannot make of the citizen who, as of today, still doesn't have a contract.
And every day she's employed here, she has to continuously work.
I'm not talking flippantly about, well, she can only work 2 hours a day, and she needs to spend the rest of the day playing with her cats or walking her dog or something like that. She has other work. That's the issue. And so she's telling us candidly that how long will it take you to do 35 hours? Right now, it's going to take her until March.
And I'm wholesale rejecting that. I'm just letting you know right now. I reject that she would have to take until March
You reject our evidence.
to do 35 hours of work.
Yeah, this is evidence. So the court, I mean, that's what the evidence says.
I weighed that evidence, and I find it to be unreasonable.
The government has provided no evidence to the contrary, other than a day equals 24 hours and there are 7 days in a week. I mean, we've been pushed into this position where, and we seem to keep getting pushed back from the court, saying, hey, defense, your position is unreasonable. What you're doing is unreasonable. You're not going fast enough. It doesn't matter how much evidence we put forward here. It seems that this evidence continues to get weighed with less credibility than proffers of trial counsel, which is what we've had during this motion as well. The trial counsel was proffered that, hey, we've taken every reasonable step we can. It's just the defense isn't cooperating, and Ms. Wong is refusing to provide her address, and they just keep misrepresenting or oversimplifying issues with dunce. Bottom line is, this is the evidence, and what the defense is telling you is that Ms. Wong cannot be done by the time this trial is set to start. And that being the case, we cannot benefit from her expert assistance, which is necessary for Commander Ely's fair trial. And if we don't get an abatement, then we don't get a fair trial. We all love the trains to run on time. I'd love this court-martial to go on time, but we can't, because we can't have a fair trial next week. And that's the root of this motion, sir.
Trial counsel.
Yeah, and defense says they didn't cause this, but actually they did. They say it's unfair to ask Ms. Wong, a civilian, to do this. The defense chose Ms. Wong. Back in September, without notifying the convening authority, the defense, on their own, consulted with Ms. Wong and had her produce a report, which they then used to justify why she is necessary. By doing that, they backed themselves and the court and the government into a corner. If they had followed the rule and had sought expert funding from the convening authority first, the government would have the opportunity to perhaps assign a government-employed expert who we could order to work 35 hours in the next week. So,
real quick, Your Honor.
Hold on.
the defense had their opportunity.
Let me hear them, and then I'll hear you, counsel.
So first of all, tracing this back, That's the root of the issue. Second, Ms. Vaughn's letter that the defense just submitted as proof of all the work that she did. There's a lot of interesting things in here. First, I draw attention to all of the issues that have come up. Never once did she notify the government of any of these issues. She notified Lieutenant Brett, which is a step, which is good. But the other step is notifying the actual people who may be able to solve the problems. And actually, she complains numerous times in her letter that no one from the Coast Guard was helping her. Well, that's because the defense would not let us help her. The defense repeatedly made their position clear that no one from the government could communicate with Ms. Vaughn. That was directly from the defense counsel. So they can't have it both ways and say the government didn't help her, but also not let the government help her. Also, I want to clear up as well, the defense has repeatedly stated Ms. Vaughn is unfunded. That is not true. On Friday, the defense was notified that while a contract has not been signed, she has been funded in FPD, the purchase request was approved, and that she was allowed to start work immediately. And the government will see that was an email from trial counsel to the defense on Friday, 15 January.
At what time?
At 14:14 p.m. And while I will concede there are certainly aspects of the government contracting process that are convoluted and not simple, we're not talking about all those things. For example, on Wednesday, January 13th, Ms. Vaughn was sent an email by the contracting office asking her to confirm the quote of the contract by 10:00. That was sent on around 3:30 on Wednesday afternoon to confirm by 10:00 the next day, Thursday the 14th. Ms. Vaughn did not respond to that email. It took an email from trial counsel to the defense saying, hey, has she provided the information? Somehow Ms. Vaughn apparently didn't get that email, even though it was sent to an email address that she provided to the government. Then, once we found out about that problem, she didn't get the email. Once she did get the email, she still didn't respond until Friday morning. And this wasn't a task that was convoluted or complicated. She simply had to reply back, or the contract office left her the opportunity to call them and confirm the price. It was a simple task that it took 2.5 days to accomplish. And that's consistent with the pattern that has gone on with this issue since October, as we laid out in our motion, where the defense received a ruling from the court that this evidence would be admissible, that their expert wasn't funded. They waited 3 weeks before requesting the funding, even though they already knew the evidence would likely be presented in court. So it's this pattern of doing everything sequentially. Oh, we shouldn't be expected to have her sign up for something until we know she's funded. They chose her. So if they wanted her to be their expert, that is on the defense to do due diligence, to make sure that if they do get a favorable ruling, that it's ready to go. They can't refuse to do the due diligence that's required and then blame it on the government when it takes a while. That's the issue in the case, along with the miscommunications that were caused by no one telling the government about problems that could be solved. The physical address concern is a legitimate concern. And while Ms. Vaughn and Lieutenant Brett may have been working it from their end, it wasn't until days, weeks later that anyone from the Coast Guard contracting side knew about the problem.
Can you point me to a date when somebody from the Coast Guard contracting side knew it was an issue?
Well, I don't want to contact. I know when trial counsel found out about it, which was in mid-December, but according to Ms. Vaughn, she knew about it in early December. So that's a week plus that this issue was out there that could have been solved quicker if all parties had known about it. So it's not enough to say the government contracting process is convoluted. She couldn't figure it out. There are the resources available to help with that, we can't solve problems that we don't know about. So ultimately, the remedy the defense seeks on abatement, one, is not the proper remedy, because abatement is a remedy when the government refuses to fund a court order.
They state that the language from 703 says it fails to fund. So are you arguing that you...
Well, I would argue that the expert was funded on Friday, and the defense knew that. So that's actually a moot point, because she's been able to work since Friday.
Okay, so okay, go ahead.
So just to wrap up, that even the lower court remedy is not warranted in this case, because any failures, delays that have gone on, rest with misdemeanor offense, intentionally, noble, whatever. It's the government can't make the vendor do the steps that she's required to do. We can help her when we know that there are issues, but we can't do them for her. That's all, Your Honor.
One moment.
Number one, sir, you have this evidence in that package. The government was aware on 10 December that there was this issue with Miss Wong's address, and the issue of Doug's that Lieutenant Brett's already discussed. 10 December. There should be no complaint that they weren't made aware of it. This is days off the court's order. Number two, Commander Crow mentioned an email on Friday. Y1 Klebeck, who works for the Legal Service Command, sent an email saying, "Good morning, your defense expert is funded. There's a contract." That doesn't mean there's a contract. That means Y1 Klebeck sent an email. Sure, proceed that evidence, give that evidence the weight you wish. But we contacted Miss Wong right after that. She wrote this letter. We asked her, "Hey, do you get a contract from the Coast Guard?" No. There's no signed contract yet. So, sure, all right. Even if she were hypothetically funded on Friday, we filed this motion to abate 2 weeks ago because she doesn't have the time, as of today, to complete this work. And all I'm hearing from the government is an attempt to blame the defense for the entire history of Ms. Wong's involvement in this court martial. They misstate rules. They suggest, that's why I stood up, the government suggests that we failed to follow a rule, which seems to imply that we committed some kind of intentional misconduct here, intentional ethical misconduct by failing to follow one rule. I'm not sure what rule they're talking about. RCM 703 says, if the defense believes that employment of an expert witness at government expense is required, then they shall request so through the convening authority. That's what REIS stands for. That's what the government relies on their motion. And we did. As soon as we decided, as soon as we knew that her employment at government expense was necessary, we submitted that request to the convening authority. We're allowed to do what we want with private funds that we had available beforehand. None of that matters. Where we consulted with Ms. Wong beforehand has nothing to do with the government's obligations to fund an expert the court has deemed necessary for defense preparation. This whole notion that the government's also trying to place an obligation on us. And this is, well, it's irritating to be honest. But we submitted a request to the convening authority back in September for funding. The convening authority denied that request. And it's a big deal to the government that after the convening authority denied a request, we waited 3 weeks, until 3 weeks after a court order, I'm not even sure if it was 3 weeks, to submit a request to reconsider the convening authority's denial. We have no obligation to submit any request for reconsideration. We got our answer, they denied it. We could always file a motion to compel funding with the court, which we did. To give you some background, I ended up submitting that request for reconsideration after I finally got on the phone with the staff judge advocate and had a chat about it. And that led me to believe that that would be considered by the convening authority. So we requested that to avoid litigation, but we had no obligation to do so. All the government is doing is nitpicking. examples of when we've done everything we possibly could to prepare for this trial, to be ready for trial, to make sure trial goes ahead, because Kamala really cares. This thing is over. He's waited long enough. He wants his day in court. But he needs a fair trial. We've been moving that ball down the playing field. And when we bring up valid issues, all we get is finger-pointing from the government and trying to blame us. And that's unacceptable. The bottom line is we have an expert that isn't funded. It's the government's obligation to fund her. They chose this method of funding experts. This is the process they have in place. It's ridiculous, it's long, it's arduous. None of that is Ms. Wong's fault. None of that is the defense's fault. And she now can't complete her work before trial. We need to be in abatement, or else we can't have a fair trial.
And they don't know the benefit from the
All that happens if we don't have an abatement is the government benefits from all this delay, Your Honor. The delay that's already happened. They've already benefited from this delay. They've already perfected their case. This is all to the detriment of Kamala, really.
One thing I made, I wasn't referring to an email from 111 Quebec. I was referring to an email from myself to the defense counsel where I said work can be started immediately. So just because the defense chose not to start work.
Has that been submitted as evidence?
No, Your Honor, but I will submit it.
Please submit that as an attachment to your motion.
Yes, Your Honor.
It's not a contract.
Can I actually see a copy of that, please?
Yes, sir.
You may, Bud. Thank you. Trial counsel is done as I've asked.
She hasn't signed it. He can't tell us what to do. He can't authorize us to put a note. We have no idea how this works. And he's going to rely on that over You need to put the emails in that I just sent you where she replied back. Yeah, she replied to Perkins, or to Gordon. I don't have it. It's the one I sent you this morning. You should just type Gordon.
Trial counsel,
Yes, sir.
how long did it take your expert consultant document examiner to review the question letter?
About 3 days, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm going to hand this attachment to the government's expert to the court reporter.
Search for contact. Oh, it's only so we can report ruling. We complete everything.
Okay, the court is certainly not ready to issue a ruling on this. I'm going to have to take a look at, I know I've seen a lot of these emails before based on my early court order, but I obviously want to take a significant look at Ms. Wong's letter. My intent, counsel, is to issue a written ruling tonight on this. Does everyone have the ability to monitor their email overnight?
Yes, sir.
I monitor my email, Your Honor, yes. We have an additional email we'll be submitting then, as included to consider.
She replied to this. She replied to this on the 15th.
Specifically, this email the government just submitted, Ms. Wong replied to saying, hey, I don't have a contract yet.
Or to Miss.
Okay.
Or Mr.
Can you just read it to me?
It's not in that chain. It's not in that chain here. It's the one that had the court ruling attached. No. Recording. Just push this.
If I thought it was just a one-liner, counsel. If it's longer, if it's like a paragraph, you can just submit it.
I've just got a lot of emails I'm looking through here.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, it's about
She replied at 6:30 on the 15th, explaining that she had questions about the contract.
It's from 6:53 on January 15th, Your Honor, 6:53 p.m. From as well to Ms. Gordon, who's in this, I guess, the POC that the government lists in this email.
That he emailed us to contact.
Hello, Ms. Gordon. I appreciate you emailing the award documents. I have some questions. A, regarding solicitation of contract order for commercial items document, page 1, section 20. First two sentences, a firm fixed price purchase order for pretrial. My concern is with the firm fixed price wording. If I am asked to do additional work beyond the scope I was originally retained for, would I be precluded from requesting additional funding? Question mark. Two sentences 10 through 11 state period of performance, January 15th through February 5th.
All right, counsel, I can't follow that. I thought it was a one-liner. Can you just please submit it to the court reporter?
Can do, sir.
And I'll take it home with me.
Number two, sir, just to follow up on a question the court had for the government, was how long did their Secret Service agent, who was a government employee, need to spend with the evidence to get an opinion? We don't even know if he has an opinion yet or what work he did. We haven't seen anything. It's part of our motion to compel discovery. I don't know what he looked at. If he's doing the same test that Ms. Wong is supposed to perform, he's looking at the same stuff Ms. Wong is supposed to look at. I don't know what kind of work he did, so that means nothing. Whenever the government consulted some Secret Service agent, he did some undefined work for them, he looked at the letter, that means absolutely nothing to the necessary work Ms. Wong has to do for defense. That cannot be a gauge as to how much time Ms. Wong possibly needs this evidence.
She had on the 15th, and he had one on the 16th.
Okay, the court will take the evidence in support of the motions into consideration, including the motions and the arguments presented here today, and I'll issue a ruling later today.
Did I copy all of them?
All right, counsel, let's go ahead and take a 15-minute recess. The time is 14:40. Court's in recess till 14:55. All rise. Thank you. Okay, the time is 1500. All parties present when the court last recessed are again present. Okay, counsel, what's next?
The next thing on our list is a motion for reconsideration.
Okay, this is your motion, right, counsel? All right, so the government's motion to reconsider Ms. Wong, the admissibility of Ms. Wong's testimony is entered in the record as Appellate Exhibit 220. Court's ruling is reserved for Appellate Exhibit 221. Defense counsel, you didn't file a reply, did you?
There's no written reply, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. If I may, just to give my colleagues some space, can I approach the podium?
Yeah.
It's largely on its motion. I'll highlight a few points. Now, the court should exclude the evidence from Ms. Wong for the reason that any probative value of the proper evidence is outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice, confusion, and likelihood of misleading the panel. It should be excluded specifically under military rule evidence 403. This will certainly lead to a trial within the trial. The defense seeks to offer a question letter to impeachment status credibility by alleging that the letter is a forgery. However, military rule of evidence 608 Bravo holds that extrinsic evidence is not admissible to impeach a witness or on collateral facts. Now, the defense also cites military rule of evidence 608 Charlie as authority to seek the admission of extrinsic evidence to expose a witness's motivation for testifying. However, that right is not without limits. In our motion, Your Honor, we cite U.S. v. Velez, 48 NJ 220, CAF 1998, which held that the court may set reasonable limits on cross-examination that intends to attack the witness's credibility based on concerns such as harassment, prejudice, confusion of the issue, or marginal relevance. This court, in its 6 August 2020 ruling, the defense's motion for reconsideration demonstrates that the defense has ample opportunity to challenge Ms. Dowdell's credibility based on alleged bias. Specifically, in that ruling, this court ruled that evidence of coaching by Ms. Dowdell, evidence of Ms. Dowdell's bias against the accused, evidence of Ms. Dowdell's bias against DCF, evidence of Ms. Dowdell's alleged bias for custody, or alleged bias regarding DCF misconduct, all fair game for Ms. Dowdell to cross-examine on. So this additional evidence will provide marginal relevance and should be accepted.
So, again, counsel, the issue is the defense's ability to ask a cross-examination question along the lines of, you forged that letter, correct? And your concern would then be, as we deem that out, she says no.
Yes.
And then there's either an impeachment by contradiction, or they bring forth Ms. Wong, who says, at the as the court's ruling stands right now, she can at least say, these are similarities that I saw. And then the court has showed for the moment whether she can issue an ultimate opinion of that letter is drafted by, my opinion is Ms. Dowdell drafted that letter. Again, that letter is that letter that we're talking about on the record right now. That was a letter purportedly written by Emily that discussed her allegations that her father abused her and her sister, Madison, who's still on the charge sheet.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If I may, I think you made two letters. I think there's a letter from E and...
Sure. So what we've been talking ad nauseum over the past month is the letter that Ms. Wong has yet to review, which is Emmy's writings. Okay. I'm tracking. So, first of all, how is that not relevant? I mean, and how is the probative value of that could be extremely high. Again, I'm focusing on the fact that, yes, Emily wrote it, but she made claims that, the accused molested her sister, who was on the charge sheet. Those are the charges. So how are we getting a file of 403?
Any evidence regarding Emily has already been excluded by this court in the previous ruling. So any evidence of EE's disclosure regarding abuse can't come in.
Okay.
Some of these writings do purport to describe those.
Okay, so if I limit the defense from a question of you forged a letter describing, the accused, actions to Emmy. You forged that letter. No. Okay, so why, if they have a good faith basis for that, why shouldn't I allow the defense to ask that question?
I would argue that question is fine, but when we get into the extrinsic evidence piece, that's when we open this up to a trial within a trial. It becomes, did Ms. Dowdell forge a letter? Is she, she's not accused of anything, she's not on trial. And we're opening this up to beyond what is sort of Bravo would allow.
Okay, I understand, counsel. But wouldn't that then go back to Ms. Wong's potential testimony to her opinion? Shouldn't the court allow that opinion then? Wouldn't that make the defense's argument that her ultimate opinion then is necessary?
I guess we still have to go through that. They're hearing it, we still have to show some reliability. But then I would argue that there's still in the Sixth Circuit Bravo, we're still getting this extrinsic evidence, which is going to create this trial within a trial. Another 4 or 3 could be and should be concluded.
Okay, so I understand correctly. The trial within a trial is whether she forged the letter?
Yes, sir.
that would be a pretty big point, wouldn't it, counsel? At trial here? I mean, wouldn't that be worth the court's time? If the defense has evidence that, Ms. Dowdell may have forged that letter, that's clearly a big deal, right? And so the government may have evidence to the contrary as far as if it's 403 talks about an undue waste of time. Right now, the way I'm looking at it, that seems like time well spent that the members need to hear. Okay. All right, that's all I have, counsel.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense first like to point out that the government has presented no good cause for filing this motion at this point in time. Likewise, they presented no new evidence in support of this motion, least of all to support filing it at this juncture. Secondly, the defense raised this motion for a ruling of admissibility of Ms. Wong's handwriting, and we proposed this evidence under 608C. We've never been talking about introducing this evidence under 608B to prove a specific instance of untruthfulness. That's never what this has been about. So the government's focus on that exception is incorrect, or it's misplaced. 608C is very clear that evidence of bias, prejudice, or motive to misrepresent may be shown to impeach a witness either by evidence of the witness or evidence otherwise adduced. Case law is clear that includes extrinsic evidence, and the defense is seeking to use evidence that Lori Dowdell forged writings to evidence false allegations of abuse in this case, which would mean that the evidence of Emily's forged writing is directly relevant under 608C and admissible under 608C. The defense isn't opposed to, some kind of either limiting instruction or perhaps even better, redaction of Emily's allegations or the specifics therein.
So can I ask a question, counsel? So how would that evidence come through? How do you anticipate that evidence coming in, either through direct cross-examination or through the testimony of Ms. Wong?
Something to the effect of, the cross-exam of Lori Dowdell, we would question her about a letter that she says her daughter wrote. Mm-hmm. In fact, she wrote that letter. In that letter, you claim your daughter made allegations against her father. We don't need to get into the substance of what the allegations were. And you included the allegations against Madison that are the subject of this case. We accuse her of writing the letter, then we call our expert, and we've already presented to the court a summary chart, demonstrative chart that would be presented to the members. So we don't anticipate Ms. Wong putting up all 8 pages of the letter for the members to see without redactions or anything like that. But just to say, relevant, there's plenty of portions that reference nothing about, criminal allegations against Commander Ely. A lot of it are complaints about chores and stepmom. And so there's plenty of opportunity to demonstrate to the members what the letter looks like and then get into the specifics of comparisons between mom's writing and the alleged author being the daughter.
Okay.
So the defense reiterates that, we do point out to the court that the government's not being required to show good cause, as the defense has always been required to show for motions like this. The government's offering no new evidence in support of this motion, and we offer this evidence under 608C, not 608B.
Okay.
One brief thought, if I may. Mm-hmm. The defense does find the timing of this motion concerning, given that, as evidence in enclosure 27 of the letter that we presented to the court from Ms. Wong, Agent Nybo represented that as late as last Wednesday, perhaps Monday, if I have the dates correct, their expert, the Secret Service agent appointed to the government, had not even received the originals in this case. And yet he purported to have completed his report or had his discussion with the government by the same day. So as of January 11th, it's our understanding their government expert was claiming to not even have seen the original documents. To this date, we don't know what his oral, verbal, any kind of opinion to the government was about his findings. I know we'll address it further in the motion to compel discovery, but we do reiterate that for the government to argue suddenly, 3 months after we've already litigated this motion and it's been settled, and we've been, of course, arguing with Ms. Wong's funding, now suddenly the government wants all the handwriting materials to be excluded without any discovery of what their expert found, with this 3-day turnaround, having not even seen the original letters. So we will be, I think, underscoring that in our motion to compel discovery.
Sure. Let me deal with that at the motion to compel discovery.
Yes, sir.
But the court is denying the government's motion to reconsider. The court finds that under 608C that the evidence of Ms. Dowdell's motive to fabricate is certainly relevant to show, again, as an outcry witness, her motive to fabricate. In this case, it goes directly to the defense's theory of the case. Again, the importance of that, the probative value of that is potentially significant for the defense, and therefore a couple witnesses, whether the government would be forced to offer a rebuttal witness to offer a different opinion, is not outweighed by that. The probative value of that is not outweighed by any danger of delay. I don't find it to be undue delay. It may make the trial a little longer, but certainly that's not the requirements of MRE 403. It's the probative value is substantially outweighed by the dangers of things like unfair prejudice or undue delay or a waste of time. It is certainly not a waste of time. It is certainly not an undue delay. And therefore, the government's motion to reconsider is denied. I would say, counsel, that you should be prepared. I think that's a good idea regarding redactions to the irrelevant portions that you mentioned in your brief. I'm aware of it based on my earlier ruling and looking at the evidence from Ms. Wong before. So again, it is worth your time to come prepared with at least some proposed redactions for the government for that. Understood, defense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. I believe we have a discovery motion.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. So again, let me just note it for the record. The defense motion to compel discovery is entered into the record as Appellate Exhibit 233. Government, did you file a response to this?
Can I do this? Maybe a new oral motion for discovery?
No, I think it's building on my order from the defense's written motion. Is that correct, counsel?
That's correct, Your Honor, plus one additional item we're requesting that you were copied on email last week and provide that as a closure to that motion.
What the court ordered.
Okay.
Your Honor, we did not file a written response.
Okay.
We just provided them what we expected by the court.
All right, and again, the court read the motion last week and provided some direction to trial counsel based on my reading of the motion. That email, which directed the government to provide certain discovery, is entered into the record as Appellate Exhibit 235. Defense counsel.
Okay, first and foremost, I'd like to offer additional evidence on our motion to compel discovery. We'll mark this as, I believe, enclosure Kilo Whiskey, I think. Yeah.
May I push on?
Yes. Okay.
So our written motion contained a request for two specific items of discovery, Your Honor. Article 25 materials, communications, to members, between members, from members. We received, I think it was close to 800 pages of material on Friday. It took a while to go through them. I'm satisfied that the government has responded to that particular order.
Okay.
It was just a lot of data to drop at the last minute, which is, I just bring up as an example of
What does it contain? Is it email? Is it...
A lot of emails, Your Honor. A lot of emails.
Okay.
Dating back from February.
Yeah, dating back over a year between prospective members. There's some, I think they call them digests of the Coast Guard or memorandums from the SJA to the convening authority regarding deselection of members, excusal of members.
Sure.
Standard Article 25.
Sure. So just for your reference, a digest is just a correspondence cover sheet that essentially you typically staple to a folder on its way up to the convening authority. Usually has a kind of a bluff summary.
Yes,
Is that what you're looking at?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Second item we requested, we still haven't received any discovery on this point. So we requested specifically any reports, opinions, and conclusions from the Secret Service handwriting or the forensic document examiner that the government retained to examine some documents in this case. The court's ruling only granted reports that were favorable to the defense. And we're requesting reports regardless of whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. Any which way, the government doesn't have a confidential expert here. This is just like submitting a DNA sample to a DNA lab down at UCSIL, or having an expert analyze a crime scene. Regardless of what those findings, results, conclusions, or reports are, the defense gets to look at those because they're relevant to our preparation at trial. Especially when we have our own handwriting expert. We need to know in advance of making a tactical decision to declare or not declare our handwriting expert as a witness. We need to know if there's rebuttal evidence coming on that particular point. That may inform the defense's decision as to whether or not to discuss this piece of evidence. We can't be tried by ambush, as it were. That's an issue we have here. So what we're moving the court to compel is the production of, or the discovery of, the report, regardless of what it says, to the defense, so we can see this non-confidential report. Verbal, written, opinions, otherwise.
Okay.
Finally, we received a Brady disclosure on Friday. We responded to the government, we copied the court, requesting detail on this disclosure, because the disclosure we received was extremely vague. We're talking about a statement that the government's primary witness gave to trial counsel just last week concerning allegations I presume she will testify to come trial. The disclosure simply says she described the color and appearance of her father's penis. She described an odor associated with the penis. She described getting a grilled cheese sandwich prior to an assault. And she described a purple nightgown. It offers no details beyond it. The government owes us more when it comes to discovery. We need the notes from that conversation, all notes that were taken down, so we can understand, okay, well, what was the color of the penis? We need to know that because, number one, it's a prior inconsistent statement. And if she changes a story between then and trial, if it was yellow last week and purple at trial, we have another issue there. But nowhere in discovery we see the color described as of yet. So we need to understand what the disclosure was, what the particulars of these statements were. We can't prepare for trial without those particulars. Just a vague assertion that, hey, defense, you'll get to trial and she'll talk about the color and appearance of his penis. That's trial by ambush. We need to know exactly what it is that she told trial counsel last week. And so we sent this request to the government. They responded at 9:07 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, giving us the office number to a civilian employed by LSC, who naturally didn't pick up that phone on Saturday. I presume she was out of the office on Sunday as well. I tried on Saturday. I figured it wasn't worth my time to try on Sunday or today, a federal holiday. We need the notes discovered to us, sir.
Okay, so
It's an active Brady.
if there are notes, right?
No.
So if there are no notes, you can't make notes, correct?
I mean, if there are notes, it's an active Brady violation if there are no notes. They're having a conversation with a witness who, for the first time, in all the discovery we've seen, gives particular details that we've never seen before anywhere in discovery. And the government doesn't think that they have an obligation to document that and provide it to us? That's not what Brady stands for. They're required to give those statements to us. They're inconsistent statements.
Inconsistent with what, counsel?
Statements that she's given previously throughout the 17,000 pages of discovery we have in this case, and every statement we've seen from her to other government agents, to DCF employees, to healthcare workers.
Has she ever described, in those pages of discovery, has she ever described her father's penis?
It's a prior omission.
Or the color
It's a
of the penis?
prior omission, sir. She hasn't. Now, I can't speak to the mental health records the court reviewed in camera, and that raises another issue, which is, and I think we asked the court already to reconsider divulging all those mental health records. I'm going to ask for that again, because I need to see every single page of every single time she's given a statement to a mental health provider, because I believe that she neglected to mention that in there as well, and we need to know that. Certainly not mention any of the documents the court provided us in that 515 motion, sir. So that's what we require. It's required by Brady. It's a prior omission, prior inconsistent statement.
So, notes or opinions from the government document examiner, and any notes from or answers to your questions from their interview of Emmy. And something else with Article 25?
Nothing for the Article 25, sir. Back to Secret Service agent. Also contact information for the Secret Service agent so we can talk to him, I believe.
Okay.
And just tying up this Brady issue, this statement we were just, this partial statement we just discovered. Brady requires disclosure of that at the soonest opportunity. And trial counsel essentially punted the ball on Friday by saying, just go and speak to Ms. White about this. That's not the soonest opportunity. That's knowingly hamstringing us, knowing that we're coming into court on Monday, and tomorrow for voir dire, and then the next day, actively working other issues. That's taking a weekend from us where we could have looked at these statements, worked with these statements, strategized with these statements. We don't have those. They're punting the ball on that by just directing us to somebody who's not even in the office. And they have this information. Lieutenant Tiley and Lieutenant Smith were both on that conversation. It's too easy for them to disclose that. And Brady requires it.
Okay.
As of Friday, not even today.
Understood, counsel.
If I may, Purchase Board.
Yes.
And regarding the service notes and reports, we don't have any verbal or written reports from Secret Service. Receipt will turn this over to the defense counsel. Regarding our notice to defense about...
Do you have any objection to me ordering you to provide contact information of Agent?
No.
Okay.
And regarding the disclosures, the obligation statements from Emmy, and I would argue that they were not inconsistent. They were further elaborated what we previously disclosed. Ms. White was present during that conversation. She's available to the defense, unencumbered by us, without our participation. They're welcome to do her any follow-ups regarding the notes that she already provided. So I did provide the defense with some notes about these are statements that were made. But if they have further questions, they're certainly welcome to speak with Ms. White.
That's what I'm saying. Call on when testify.
Any questions from the court?
Can you respond a little bit to the defense's argument that a little bit more that this is Brady material?
That was it. There's I think exculpatory here. She's further just elaborating on what she has stated before. Any businesses
There is
were provided in the
no
notes.
difference. I've said this many times. There is no difference between exculpatory and inconsistent. These are prior omissions.
Okay.
She also made the following statement.
Counsel.
Now, if the court's seen this, Your Honor, I'll include this as well. This document that the government discovered to us on the 15th of January. It reads, during an interview with trial counsel, Commander Tiley, Lieutenant Smith, on January 14th, Emmy made statements consistent with previous disclosures. In addition, she made the following statements. So, in addition means she made these statements that weren't consistent with previous disclosures. Trial counsel recognized they had to send something to us it's disingenuous to argue that they're consistent with previous disclosures when their memo says they're not. And then it lists those 4 things.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes, sir.
So just because they said in addition, that means that is inconsistent?
Not just because they said in addition, Your Honor, because I've seen 17,000 pages of discovery, and this is the first time I'm seeing these allegations. Regardless of what Commander Talley just said about consistent or not consistent, I've read all the discovery. I know what statements Emmy has given, and she's never said this before. These are prior omissions. And for Brady purposes, there's no difference between exculpatory evidence or evidence for impeachment purposes when it comes to Brady. This is Brady. There's a constitutional duty to disclose this, not just this, but the particulars. I need to know the particulars of these statements. And all we're getting is this sort of abdication of responsibility on the part of the government when it comes to actually doing their job and giving us the disclosures we're required here. This is a witness they have exclusive access to. We don't. We've asked. We don't have access to her. This is an interview they conducted with her on the 14th of January. They've given us... I don't know if I heard Commander Talley correctly. I think he said Miss White is definitely available. I mean, if the court likes, I can call anyone French to the stand to testify about our attempts to contact her this weekend. She certainly wasn't available over the weekend at this office line they gave us.
Counsel, did you provide her a cell phone or her office line?
Neither was her office line, Your Honor.
Okay.
But she's available all this week.
Why? He has information now. His duty is now.
The duty was as of Friday, Your Honor. But now is 3 days too late. This is Brady material at the soonest possible opportunity. They've had this. They've been sitting on this all weekend. They've been sitting on this since the 14th, actually. It's too late already. They're required to disclose this.
We're saying wait till she comes back in. Doesn't even see it.
Okay, Counsel, I will follow up more, it's a little bit more thorough of an order, but in the meantime, government, please provide the contact information to the U.S. Secret Service agent by the close of business. Please make sure that he is available to the defense throughout this week. Also, Ms. White, please touch base with her. Make sure she understands that the defense is trying to raise her and to also make herself available. Again, I'll follow up a little bit more later today with the other issues. I want to think about the Brady issue a little bit more, but I'm ordering those at a minimum. Council, the next item, basically a motion to reconsider your motion to pre-admit Defense Exhibits Alpha through Charlie.
The next thing I had was a discussion of the Coast Guard LOA that's funding my travel, Your Honor. But I just wanted to alert the court just that issue.
Please do.
On the record. So, defense travel for Coast Guard courts martial, we submit a request to we've gone through this before in a discovery motion actually, a request to a Coast Guard email address and a Navy email address at JCAP, which approves essentially the ultimate travel orders and DTS authorization that we get. My entire team has submitted that. We've also submitted appropriate COVID waivers for travel, gone through all those steps. The current issue that apparently exists is that this particular LOA that funds our travel, it's a Coast Guard LOA, it's the name they use, there's just no money yet. And so the latest word I got from JCAB as of last week is we're tracking this issue. No action is required on...
What was that last acronym that you just...
JCAB, it's the JAGCOR Consolidated Administrative Business Office. one of the JAG offices that handles a lot of these travel issues and ultimately approve our DTS authorizations. So the latest correspondence I have is from one of the employees at JCAB who said, I'm tracking this issue. You have a DTS reject notice. That's because there's no funds in this LOA. I'm waiting for money to be put in this LOA. As soon as that happens, I'm going to process your travel request and approve your authorization.
Okay.
That's where we're standing. So,
Sure.
right now I'm supposed to travel this weekend, but I can't if there's no money. And
What day are you set to travel?
I'm set to travel Saturday, so.
Okay. And so, excuse my questions here, because I remember a different process when I was assigned here to the DSO. It may have been because I was a Coast Guard officer. Does Lieutenant Brett have the same process?
Yes, sir, and if I could briefly, JCAB is like the equivalent of our FinCEN, who also handles travel claims and things like that.
Yep.
And then DTS is our equivalent of our TPACs.
Yep.
So I have to do the same thing they do. We have to, especially I'm attached to a different Navy command now, we have to get JCAB approval using the Coast Guard LOA. So JCAB, the Navy Finance Center, is waiting on funding in the line of
So
accounting.
essentially, they're waiting to get paid by the Coast Guard,
Yes,
or
sir.
backfill.
That's
Okay, and the Navy is telling you that there's no money from the Coast Guard.
That there's no money in this line of accounting
Yep.
which exists for, it's a cross-org LOA that exists for this purpose.
Okay.
I think Commander Newstat took the last of it.
Okay. Understood. I'm going to look to the government and ask you to look into that and provide me an answer by tomorrow, please. Yes, sir.
And then the next thing we had was, I would call it a motion to reconsider your rulings, or you ruled that you deemed them admissible. I'm just...
Portions of it admissible,
Portions
correct?
admissible. I've isolated those portions. I provided copies to the government, so I'm moving to admit those portions the court deemed admissible.
Okay. So, trial counsel, have you reviewed those portions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have they do they comply with the timestamps that I have ordered in my ruling?
Yes, sir. My understanding is they do comply with the rule.
Okay. Counsel, as I explained in the last 39A, I am not going to admit those functionally right now, but you have the court's permission to use them in your opening statement if you would like to.
When would the court be inclined to functionally admit them? I guess would be my question to the court, sir, so I understand exactly.
After the members are seated.
Understood, sir. I'm happy to provide these copies to the court reporter right now. These are the discs we burned, just so you have those. I'll do it after this hearing, sir.
Yeah, that'd be great. When on your counsel, is there anything?
The last two things I have on my list, sir, we were talking about witness issues, potentially witness order, and then discussion of proposed voir dire questions.
Sure.
Those are all mine.
Okay, so last week I believe Lieutenant Brett alerted the court of essentially concerns with the defense's ability to begin their case in chief if they decided to put a case on until week 2 of trial, which would have been February, the week starting February 2nd. The issue being that based on the proposed witness list, a good number of government witnesses have declined the opportunity to speak to the defense, and essentially the defense was alerting me to the fact that they anticipate a lot of delays in the government's case, as they will be likely asking for frequent recesses to prepare cross-examinations, or again ask one last time if before they testify if witnesses are willing to speak to the defense. Lieutenant Brett, have I summarized your concerns?
In that email to the court, Your Honor, we cited concerns that not only have we not had an opportunity to speak to, I think, 90% of the government's witnesses, but the government has a 16-witness list right now that they've refused to whittle down. And so we do expect that it's a somewhat bolstered list. We don't expect the government will actually be able to call these witnesses because we anticipate, when we've objected previously on the record to these witnesses, to the admissibility of their testimony and the relevance of the testimony of at least 8 of these witnesses, but the court has not required the government to provide any kind of proffer to demonstrate the relevance or admissibility of the testimony of those witnesses, nor has the government whittled its list down any. So, yes, we have concerns with the breaks caused by COVID mitigation efforts during trial. The court previously did, it's not even a matter of whether the witnesses will be willing to speak to us at trial. The court has already ordered that you're going to give us the opportunity to speak to the witnesses at least after their direct exams if they continue to refuse. So we expect that if we do seize that opportunity, that'll be time-consuming for each one of those witnesses that we listed. And then, again, Your Honor, the idea that we're going to have a 39A before at least 8 of these witnesses to litigate the admissibility of each one of their testimony as they arise. So those 3 factors cause us great concern about our ability to present a case any sooner than 1 February, which would be the second Monday of trial. And so we offered that to the government over a week ago now to say, here are our concerns. Witnesses are reaching out to us who are flying around the country